This is the Solution Talk, Shaping Tomorrow's Cities, Social Innovation for Mobility and Circularity. Please welcome onto the stage, Benjamin de la Peña from Shared Use Mobility Center.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Benjamin de la Peña. Some people call me Benji. I had remarked earlier that when, I think that was the most well-voiced over introduction I've ever had. And I felt like I was starring something. But if I hear Benjamin de la Peña, I remember my late mother and remember being in trouble. Because whenever your full name is read, right, and then you're in trouble. Welcome to this talk and discussion. Again, this is not an expert panel. There's expertise in this circle, but also expertise around the room. And what we want to do is engage you in conversation. I will be asking them a few questions, but I will be gathering your thoughts too. Now, there are some very big words on that title. Social innovation, mobility, and circularity, right? And so I won't attempt to define all of them, but my friend Cyprien Odada, who's over there, had been asking one of our friends, Kalpana, who's on our panel, what is social innovation? And I think Kalpana had the best answer. There's solutions that are about people, right? So let me frame our conversation, and then I will ask the panelists to kind of introduce themselves very briefly, and I will warn you about my introductions. In spaces like this, we are always very conscious of title and CV and who's who, right? But we are all people who live in cities or towns, and that's what I want to bring up. So it is an urban world. It's now 50% urban. By 2070, it's supposed to be 70% urban, right? And Jeffrey West said that cities are social reactors. You meet people, it generates ideas, you make connections, and it's powerful both for yourself and for community. And yet at the same time, we're living in an age that is very much about isolation. There was a great article in The Atlantic about the century of isolation, right? That we've separated ourselves, looked into our screens, lived in individual spaces. And yet, this is also an age of urgency, right? Because climate change. And in fact, the title of this space is Solutions, right? And so very often, the temptation is to bring solutions down from on top because of the urgency, because we have to solve it, right? And very often, those solutions are not totally appropriate. Right? Meanwhile, there is more brains out there than all of us combined in each of our cities. So I'm going to ask my panelists, I will introduce them, then I will ask them a question, and then we'll dive into this, okay? So the rules of the game is, raise your hand if you have a particular question. We'll talk a bit, but most of the time we'll be spending talking with you. Kalpana Viswanath is the founder and CEO of Safetipin. Kalpana, tell us a little bit about Safetipin, but tell me what's your most favorite place in any city that you've lived in?
Oh. I'm Kalpana, and I'm from India, and I do many things, but among one of them is to run an organization called Safetipin, which is working on building safer and gender-responsive urban infrastructure, urban services, transport around the world. I'm also part of we are the secretariat of a network called Women on the Move Asia, and we're part of a global alliance on feminist transport. So if any of you are interested to know more about this, you can get in touch with me. The most favorite place in any city, interestingly, I actually grew up in Bangkok, Thailand, which is which after I left, I realized it is a city with amazing public spaces. The entire street is a vibrant public space with shops, foot massages whenever you get tired of shopping, and then places to eat after that. So I think for me, it is really the vibrancy of the street, which makes me really, at the end of the day, despite all its problems, I love cities.
Yeah. Bangkok also has, in every street you will find a shrine, a small shrine that people put up. So it's holy spaces, sacred spaces on streets too. Juan David is with UNDP and heads the experimental, is that experimentation?
Yes,
Unit,
experimentation.
Yes. So tell us about that unit that you're heading, and then tell us what's your most favorite part or place in any city.
So my role is head of experimentation, Accelerator Lab Colombia. And well, the teamwork is working a network. Probably Gina is going to be a little bit more deep into that. But we're part of a network in which we connect with other countries, try to understand which are the shared problems or shared solutions that we can learn from each other, and work very articulated with the country office and see which are the priorities of the country office and what we can offer the network.
Okay.
So Kalpana answered something really similar to what I was going to say. Probably what I like the most about cities is chaos.
Yeah.
So get to a place, in India, I was in Ahmedabad. So Ahmedabad is famous because of the traffic. So I went to places where you can see people don't stop in the round point. They will just go in and try to understand and see how it works out. I'm from Bogota, also a very complex city, almost 10 million inhabitants. And to see the chaos of the city get lost in the places that usually people would fear would be something difficult to get lost in there. So I like when I go to cities, and what I like about Bogota is chaos.
Yeah, fantastic. Cynthia Chávez is with the state and city of Puebla in Mexico City, and she's the head of mobility and security, which is an interesting combination, right? It's mobility and security. But tell us about the work you do very briefly, and then which part of any city you've lived in, it might be Puebla, that you particularly like.
Okay, so hello everyone, I'm Cynthia Chávez. I'm currently serving as a Deputy Minister of Mobility and Safety Road for the State Ministry of Transport and Mobility in Puebla, Mexico. So the whole Puebla state is a 6 million inhabitant state, and the metropolitan area of Puebla is a 4.3 million people living there. So my favorite place everywhere I go, and perhaps not in Puebla, but everywhere else, is the public transport service. I really love to move around using public transport. In Puebla, we have quite challenging tasks yet to make it like a friendly and easy place to be and to access to. But that's my favorite place everywhere I go.
Yeah. And they're very social places, the public transport. Gina heads the UNDP Accelerator Labs. I was going to go innovation. There's an innovation. Accelerator Labs, which is this network of people investigating the innovations that are coming from the ground. Tell us about your work and tell us about your favorite place in any city.
Thanks, Benji. So we've been, at UNDP, we've been working for the last 5-6 years with the German government, the Federal Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development. I think I've got that right now, right? It took me 5 years, but I think I got it.
And I appreciate you didn't go to the acronym.
No acronyms. Right, exactly. Basically, we've been feeling that we needed to catch up to the pace of change. We needed to bring innovation into sustainable development to reimagine it. So we set up innovation labs in 114 countries around the world, and we're kind of cultivating all the intelligence that's coming from that and speeding up our response.
So good. So it's bringing up ideas from the ground, right?
Absolutely.
And so then I'm going to turn to Juan David and say, this is I heard you talk about you're looking at what's happening across your network and looking particularly at what are the problems people are solving and how are they solving them. Tell us more about that work. And if you want to get particular about a piece of work you're working on now, tell us about that. And how is it different from, in conferences like this, we talk about programs and strategies and all of that. What are you seeing on the ground?
Okay, so part of the interesting work of the labs is that we are on the ground, right? So we have this idea of connection, but how are we bringing this to specific countries? So it's really interesting to see what's happening around on specific topics. So this year we found out there are some of the teams that are working on mobility. So this project began as a project on illegal parking. Illegal parking is causing a lot of the jams in the city. It's like, from the research done, 130 hours people spent on a year on traffic jams in Bogota. But then we started seeing, like, if we're finding for solutions, and if people are seeing illegal parking as something really wrong, maybe they don't see they're doing something wrong. They're just parking. So we're trying to understand what is it about parking and why we see it like binary, like you park well or you park wrong. For people like 100 colors, right? I park slightly well or I park slightly wrong. But then the way they do it is actually kind of they're solving something.
Yes.
A need they have. So we're trying to understand this, like what is illegal parking, not seeing it like this is a problem and you're doing it wrong, like trying to understand what happens. And how we're doing it is trying to understand the system and actually a lot of behavior because it depends on behavior. So what are we doing? We're kind of scaling up a project that we did in crisis. So there was a hurricane in Colombia. Experts had to be there. We couldn't take them there. We used 360 cameras. So we actually took experts to the ground without being there because they were seeing the VR experience of what was happening. We took drones to actually see how was the impact of the hurricane. And we did some participatory mapping. So when we had this idea, okay, let's face mobility, why don't we scale up these tools? Because usually decision makers don't go to the places decisions have to be taken. So illegal parking is done in a lot of places in the city. Probably they go to the places it's most convenient to them. But actually where the most chaotic places are, they don't go. So we started having this 360 footage so they can be there. They can see people not getting afraid because they see a policeman, but actually see the people just parking there, don't mind, next to the no parking sign. So there's something that we have to understand. And all of this is not actually facing illegal parking, but understanding mobility and the complexity of a city. How is the system of a city working? How is this small area land is showing us how people behave and how people actually
So it's really looking
interact.
at what's happening and how people behave and how they solve their problem, right?
Main point of this is that they don't see it as a problem.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
So that makes a whole difference on we're not tackling as you are a problem, but let's understand what is this about. But of course, if we think of solving the problem for today, probably in 2 years, there's going to be another thing.
problem.
So we're trying to understand like the system of it and to think about the future.
So one last, follow-up question. As you find this all out, I heard you say lawmakers should put VR on them. Of course, if I had my druthers, I'll force all lawmakers to take public transportation. Then we'll solve public transportation because they experience it. But what's the hope, right? If they see it and experience it, there's going to be better legislation or better regulations?
At this point, how are we doing it? I mean, it's several things, right? So we want people to actually participate on the mapping. And then that's already a change of mind. Because if we call people to, okay, help me see what's happening with parking, then they change their mindset, right? They say, okay, parking is something that's happening to the city and that maybe we're doing it wrong. But what we're trying to do right now is actually all of these tools to understand. So it's not like, okay, in 5 months, there's going to be a new regulation. We are working together with the Bogota city government, with Secretariat of Culture, which are interested on the using of the tools. And actually, after understanding the problem and the behavior, then we're going to make a decision after some experimentation is done on probably some solution and a lot of behavioral science mapping.
I think someone from the Secretariat of Culture is here. We'll turn to him later. He's somewhere around, right? Kalpana, I'm going to turn to you and say it's like that. You're getting knowledge. Now, Safetipin started as a mapping app and participatory app, right? But tell us, as you learn more about how the women were experiencing the city through that data, what are you using that data for? In the way, are you preparing to convince, and has it convinced politicians, or is there places where, there's this new thing we didn't know what was happening and it's helping people kind of get together? Tell us more about that.
Thank you. You're right. We began with trying to map women's experience of the city. So as women walked around the city, we have this app called My Safetipin. You can all actually download it and even use it here. And the idea is to say that what makes a woman feel comfortable to walk around, use public transport, stand at a bus stop, etc. And as we collected data, so now we're about 11 years old, and we have data in about, I think, nearly 35 countries around the world and over 80 cities. So what we found was that there are two very important variables that influence the way women experience the city and are able to participate in the city. One is the fear of violence, the fear of sexual harassment, and actual sexual harassment. But it's the fear which is actually much bigger. It's the fear that when you step out, if it's a new place, if it's dark, you may experience something that is unpleasant. So that we've heard stories about women saying they don't take up certain jobs because they have to come back at night. And this is a global problem. It is more in some countries, certainly the country I come from in India, but there is enough statistics to show that this is a problem around the world. And interestingly, it is in public transport and while waiting for public transport that women tend to face the most sexual harassment. The second influencing factor for women's ability to participate is the work of care. So 16.4 billion hours of unpaid care work are done every day. Mm-hmm. The majority of this is done by women. That's a big number. Now, what happens so therefore you have one is a constraint. So you have two constraints. One is that the fear, and the other is an actual set of responsibilities, whether it's dropping children, whether it's picking up parents, going to the clinic, etc., etc. So women do what is known as trip chaining. They take many more trips in a day. They take shorter trips. They choose to drop out of work if it's not, if it doesn't make sense for them. So the reality that women face, and I think what we are trying to do at Safetipin is to collect data to take this, sort of get women to talk about their experiences and convert it into data, in sort of, not data, that is data, convert it into advocacy and material that stakeholders such as city governments, national governments, international agencies, everyone who is making policies and programs about transport, imagining that transport is gender neutral. Yeah. But when you do something as gender neutral, who are you designing for? You're designing for probably a Caucasian, male, able-bodied, who probably has someone doing all the care work in his house, so he can go in the morning and come back in the evening. So for as women, I mean, very often, you know, when you're stepping into a metro or something and you're trying to hold that thing above that, it is just a little higher than it's comfortable. Yes. And it makes no sense. You should design it for a shorter person, and taller people could use it. But it's just that the male as norm has been the way that we have designed everything in the world. And to change that, data plays a very important role, right? I mean, experiences, and data is not only number, data is stories. Data is the real lives of people. So what we do is we do mapping, we do date numbers, we do stories. And we've had interesting things like in Delhi, actually, the city I live in, our data actually contributed to reducing dark spots in the city from nearly 8,000 dark spots to less than 1,000. In prod areas, we do a lot of work on last mile connectivity.
I'll explore that a bit more too, particularly with gig workers and right? But there's this narrative of I work in transportation, and for any big transportation project, the usual metric that you will hear from the expert transportation engineers is travel time saved. We're going to put this here because it's travel time saved, without realizing you've broken trips and you're only serving one direction or two directions, right? So I'm going to turn to Cynthia, and I know you said that you're still struggling, we're still trying to put together a public transportation system, and I'm sure you've experienced that not the solution that comes down isn't completely appropriate, and there are innovations you try to look for to improve the service, and making things that are invisible visible. One of the things, I see someone from Slum Dwellers International, one of my favorite quotes from Slum Dwellers International is, the first act of inclusion is to be counted. And very often we don't count women, we don't count their travels, we don't count, except people who go to the offices is what we count. Cynthia, tell us about both the challenges of public transportation and the kind of innovations that you're looking for or seeing.
Okay. So we are facing pretty much, well, a lot of challenges, and we are actively working to address them. First and foremost is the actual renew of our public transport fleet that we are currently facing around 6,000 public transport vehicles, most of them buses, are already have already surpassed their life.
Yeah.
So we need to renew them. Therefore, we are seeking for strategic partnerships with development banks in order to offer financing, preferential financing rates, as long as we are also working in some new strategic initiatives, such as reaching for international institutions, international fundings, in order to give them for the transport operators to renew their units, and in ways such as scrappage incentives and green bonds. So we are currently working on that. We are closely working with KfW Bank, and as long as national development banks. And we also face another challenge that is regarding gender-sensitive policies. Women in Puebla have identified the public transport as the most unsafe place to be in, and followed by the street while waiting for the service. So currently we have already equipped 2,000 out of our 8,000 public transport buses with cameras, GPS, and panic buttons. We still have to connect the systems to the central security platform, and we still have to develop their intervention protocols, not only for bus operators, but also for security personnel.
So when you say these bus operators, are these used to be colectivos, and then you put them into formalized, I don't like the word formalized service? Is that partly what you're...
Well, not yet. We're still working in the traditional...
The municipal buses.
Yes. Well, it's a public service, but they are all given in concessions to private operators, but they are not organized as companies or entrepreneurs. So we are talking about 36,000 of concessions that are pretty much also 36,000 operators.
Yes.
So they are not organized, and now we have to talk a lot.
We call them popular transportation. We particularly like them. Gina, I'm going to ask you to bring us to kind of a 40,000-foot view. And interestingly enough, what you set up in UNDP is exactly this counter structure, if I might call it that, of rather than, we all met in Hamburg and we've got all the solutions, we're coming down. Instead, you are coming from below and saying, what are you seeing there, and how are people solving? Tell us about that challenge of counteracting the kind of top-down urgency of we have to find a solution and here's a fixed solution. And how did you get to build out this network?
Yeah, exactly. So I think the sort of, after 5 years and 100 countries and thousands of experiments and lots of innovations from women and men who are suffering effects of climate change, living in cities, inventing things, here's what I have for you. You'll probably say, was it worth it? But let me give you that.
Always worth it.
I think what I've been thinking about recently is that it is as important that we learn from informal innovations, informal transport, and you've taught me not to say informal, I should say popular transport.
It's from the people.
Artisanal transport, paratransport, not artisanal, okay. Popular transport, right? Which moves millions of people around the world, employs hundreds of thousands. It is as important to learn from the informal parts of an economy or a city or sustainable development at large as it is to think about the AI and digital revolution, right? So, I mean, you all, I guess we're speaking to like-minded people because you could be in the AI session right now and you're here. Not to undermine the power of technology. It also helps make the invisible visible, right? Yes. You can measure air pollution with technology. You can do a million different things. And it also helps you move to scale. So it's extraordinary. And then we're all trying to figure out what generative AI can do for us, every day and every sleepless night when we get nervous that it can do more than we can. But the thing I've been thinking about a lot is this power of grassroots informal innovators, right? Which, you see every day in the city, right? Just to give you one example that I've been looking at a lot, we had a shout out this morning for Tanzania, in Tanga City, Tanzania. Our Accelerator lab is working on something. The majority of plastic that's separated from organic waste is done by informal waste pickers. And you see this in many cities around the world, right? The vast majority of them don't have health insurance. And they don't have the money to buy health insurance. So this is an experiment where we're trying to turn garbage into health insurance, basically. We're tokenizing the informal waste pickers' contribution of plastic waste to the waste bank, and in exchange giving them insurance on medical emergencies, accidents, time lost from work, that kind of thing. So I think we need to focus more on the informal as much as we do on the tech. And in the informal, the second step of inclusion, if you will, right? The first step is start counting. The second step is to start figuring out incentives. Right? And because they are not as natural as you would think, right? It's not about punishment. It's not about giving people tickets for illegal parking, right? There's something, it's more of a carrot than a stick.
I like the point you're making of first seeing how people are doing it, right? And then empowering that, right? Particularly the waste pickers. So Women in Informal Employment, Globalizing and Organizing, works with waste pickers. And one of their biggest victories, I think it was, I'm going to blank out, I think it was Lima, was the Waste Pickers Association bid for a recycling contract that the city was giving up, arguing that they were already doing that recycling. And if you've ever spent time with waste pickers, that's what they do. They're looking for value. So all our talk of circularity, they're already doing that, right? And so empowering more of that would be, I think, just great and fantastic. But I'm going to turn to two people in the audience because, Juan David, you mentioned this is a cultural project, understanding why people behave a certain way. And Diego Maldonado is somewhere.
I think he's not.
What?
I think he's not.
Oh, he's not here. Okay. So, he's with the culture and cultural knowledge. So I thought I was going to call him. And then I'm going to call instead on Senator Crystal Asige from Kenya, who is one of the 40 under 40 in Kenya, and was a singer and is an activist, right, of advocating for people who are differently abled and bringing that voice. Tell us, what you've seen, if I might say that, and experience on the ground that you think you bring to the policymakers and the decision makers.
Okay, thank you so much. So, as a visually impaired person, VIP in short, you can call me VIP. As a VIP and living in the Global South, and even before I came into the Senate, I'm an expert in inclusive mobility and transport. That's what I've been doing. And so I bring my expertise into legislation. And what I see as being a really huge gap is, like everyone has said, what's happening on the ground versus what leaders and decision makers are solving for. I think it was said really beautifully that the decision makers are not where the decisions need to be made. And so as somebody who has been able to cross over both worlds, I see, number one, that innovation, as much as it is a big ticket item, it is leaving behind a huge population, which is people with disabilities. Because, for example, the more smart you get, that means that you're removing physical interaction. People with disabilities need someone to hold on to speak to guide them, to move them from point A to B, etc. So the more we are moving into touch screens and smart devices, there are a huge population of people who are missing out and actually being left further behind. Number two, I also think that it's very difficult to translate these ideas from experts on the ground, as Gina has said, because I believe as well the experts are the ones on the ground. They're the ones with the solutions. It's just that we are out here in boardrooms and C-suites, thinking that we know or what is good for them. The problem is with people with disabilities, they're on the ground, but they cannot get their message up to decision makers. Decision makers, for example, that I have been working with, I have to actually put them through a disability simulation for them to understand what it's it's like to travel with a disability.
Yeah.
Before that, they just say, oh, the building has a ramp. So, I mean, we're compliant. The building has a lift, we're compliant. But no, there are many, many other steps in between that. If you have to take a trip from point A to B, a person with disabilities has A1, A2, A3, A4 to go through, then B1, B2. There's so many other little steps in the middle that we need decision makers to understand and solve for. So I think that all that has been said relates twice as much, or maybe even more, for people with disabilities. And also, an issue that I am seeing is in legislation is making legislators understand that these items are very important to be put in to be anchored in the law, not just to be leaving it to civil service, etc., to look for the data and then bring it to them, but actually writing it into law. So I have been in a position where, I mean, I'm lucky enough that I've been on both sides, so I am bringing my inclusion and mobility work into legislation, and I've just actually passed the Persons with Disabilities Act of 2025, which has huge sections on universal design, accessibility, so on and so forth. So at least that's something that has been a positive.
Thank you so much, Crystal. I think you make a point too. There are some transportation planners, me included, who think, okay, we need to provide for those who are differently abled. And we always think people in wheelchairs, which is part of it, but that's not all. So there are people with visual impairments, there are people with cognitive impairments, and that's a very, very different set. So understanding that and just not having representation is important. We've got 15 minutes left, according to that clock, or 14. I'd like to open it up to the audience. If you have any questions or comments, or a question and a comment, please don't soliloquy. We may not have enough time for that, but and I'm going to target someone too to kind of, I know she's been thinking a lot about this. Cyprine Odada leads Shaping Cities for Women. Is that the title? Women Shape Cities. The other way, the actor is
Give her the mic.
And the
Crystal,
noun. So
can I give her the mic?
tell us she has a much.
Oh, you've got one. I'm sorry. Let me not take that from you then.
I was trying to hide and not speak. But what was your question?
Tell us about what you have seen and why we need to kind of move this in the work you're doing, right? Of women in cities and shaping of cities so that we're aware of the other half of the population and their needs.
Thank you. So Women Shaping Cities is an initiative that we recently launched, mainly to try and bridge the data gap in transport, because I've been in advocacy for over 10 years, and a lot of times we kept referencing the same case studies or the same stories, kept talking about the same stories, and then we realized that we're doing something right, but it's not backed by data, it's not backed by numbers. So trying to speak to policymakers and trying to convince them that women actually have different travel patterns, have different needs. And so the transport systems are not working for women, they're actually failing women. But we needed to prove that. So with the work that we're doing, we are collecting data, we're engaging women, participatory planning processes, mapping processes, and just getting women's voices into spaces that were not, rooms that are not designed to welcome women. And, that's something that is common in a lot of countries in the global south, where we have transport systems and a lot of policymakers assume it's working for everyone, but it's not working for everyone. There's a lot of people who are being left behind. And we advocate for, number one, disaggregating gender disaggregated data, but then going beyond just the gender component, we're looking at intersectionality. People have different realities. Just because we are both women does not mean we travel the same. A pregnant woman our pregnant woman travels very differently from one who's not pregnant. So understanding those nuances can really help cities design systems that work for different identities. And then now moving into data analytics, how do we actually use those numbers to make sense and identify who's being left behind? So with data analytics, you can be able to highlight the patterns and see what is not being addressed, who is not being...
who falls out of
Yes. That's thank you.
I think that's so typical, and I will open it up to questions. Just two notes, right? One is the experience of bus rapid transit in South Africa, where they now are running two systems, and they're pretty okay. But one of the things that did not appear in the way they were planning it was it's supposed to be really fast, so travel time saved. But for a woman in South Africa, after sundown, getting off 500 meters from the BRT station to walk to your home was not the best thing. And yet, a minibus taxi will drop you off exactly where you need to get to drop off, right? Yeah. So the other thing that I was going to share, which is a real victory, if you've read the book Invisible Women, yes, right, is that crash test dummies are all modeled after male bodies. And the way they design it for women is that they just reduce the size of the male body. But Astrid, I'm going to blank out her last name, in Gothenburg, they just released a crash test dummy that is modeled after a female in both dimensions and where the areas are that are vulnerable. So hopefully they'll start using that in crash tests. All right, we've got about 9.5 minutes. Any other questions?
Somebody behind you, Benji.
Yes, ma'am. Tell us your name and what city you're from. Okay. What? Let's wait for the mic. You'll have to repeat it. Oh, there you go. Yeah, you can. Oh, okay.
Hi, thanks. My name is Annalena. I work with the Ministry of Environment here in Hamburg. And my question goes to you, Kalpana, because I was very inspired by your organization, Safetipin. And I wondered whether the data that you collected actually informed the work of the local, regional, or the general government. So can you tell us a bit more about that, whether they changed their policies?
Yeah. I have a mic.
Same thing as me.
Yes, thank you for the question. Well, it's a mixed bag, okay? I cannot say that in every case we've been successful. In some cases, they haven't given us the time of day. But we have had successes, right? So the Delhi example I gave you was one of them. We actually did work with Bogota City in 2014, 2015, where we did a mapping of the bicycle tracks to see how it could be made safer for women to use. And some of the findings were incorporated into designing where to put the CCTV cameras, where to put the bike stands. Similarly, we in Delhi and other cities in India, what we do is we do these gender audits. So when a large infrastructure project is being done, whether it's the World Bank or Asian Development Bank, and so if they're building a new BRT or a new metro line, what we do is we do a gender audit. So who are the people around there who are going to be using that? Would they use it? What are the what are the reasons they would or would not use it? So in some cases, I would say we've had a pretty good success rate of it being used, but it depends from city to city, honestly. But we also try and just put that data in the hands of communities and young women, particularly, to say that even if it's not adopted, can you use it in your own community? Can you become leaders and just translate that data? Because sometimes the change doesn't have to be all the way from the top. It can be, from the way a bus stop is designed, or what timings are the buses. So these are some things so the changes can be large policy level, and the changes can be infrastructure, the ways the service is designed also. Thank you.
Just a reaction to that is if anyone who's worked in local government will know, data doesn't convince people, particularly, but you have to bring the stories with it, right? I will plug some of our work. We have a publication, Shared Use Mobility Center, called Mobility Hubs for Women and Caregivers. You can find it on the net. It's free to use. But one of the things we discovered was that for women, places to wait in transportation are about the place and staying, like you said about holding, and not about how quickly can you get on the next ride. Yeah. And we've all been designing it for efficiency when what was important was the ability to stay and stay safely somewhere. Okay, another question. Back there, yes. Oop, here. I think you should mic everyone, that's what we should do.
Thank you very much. My name is Francisca Mboya, and I come from Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. And from the panel, learning from experience of women from the cities, bringing experience that I have from Dar es Salaam, our most populated city. Always construction is going on at the city. And women, thank you for the data from the gender perspective, but also it's the same in Dar es Salaam. Women are not there. And with the security of and access of the public transport, we thought we should bring more women being the drivers of the motorcycles and the buses in Dar es Salaam so that they see the actual solutions from the women themselves. And we brought She Drive to Change campaign. And learning from the experience, there are a lot of tuk-tuk and motorcycle in the city. We have big buses, but BRTs, but they're always overloaded. And the experience of women that they don't feel comfortable scrambling, getting into big buses. So they opt the tuk-tuk, which bring fewer people, and sometimes they can go with the people that they know.
Yeah.
I would like to learn if there is experience like that from India or any other country from the panel. Thank you.
You want to share? Well, I'll let you then. And,
Yeah. So I think getting women into the transport sector is a very big one, because globally it is under 25% women in the entire transport sector, and in India it's about 5%, and this includes all the back-end work, so it's not even just on the road. So I think many countries, and certainly many cities in India, have tried to get more women into the driving. And in Delhi, for example, we got 2 big policy changes before women could get on. One was a height requirement, right? So they just made a height requirement based on the average Indian man. And so no woman ever reached it. So that got changed, and they said you have to have 2 years of experience of driving a heavy vehicle. Where are you going to get the 2 years of experience? So both these were changed. And after that, after 20 years, we started this work in early 2020, there are now 70 women bus drivers who have been trained for the Delhi Transport Corporation. In another city in India, Kochi, which has started the first water metro in Asia, they've got women trained to be drivers. So I think it's very symbolic, but I think the moment you start breaking those barriers and you just see more women doing these things, yes, it becomes role models. It's like, your textbooks which say, dad goes to office, mom stays at home.
Like the Rolitas in Bogota was to put women first.
Yeah.
And part of what the strategy was, not just having women drivers, but having childcare in the bus depots so that they could bring their children. I think there was a study in Dar es Salaam, I think it was Dar es Salaam, where they paid the boda drivers to drive safer. And they had 2 tests, and the people who were getting paid wanted to make sure that the other men, knew that they were being paid to drive safer. So it had something to do with masculinity. I'm getting paid. Oh, that's my signal.
Wow.
All right, so we've got 3 minutes left. Maybe let's wrap it up a bit we didn't get as many questions, I'm sorry, but I'm going to ask the panel to kind of wrap us up with your last statement on, this is a mishmash of circularity, mobility, and social innovation, big words. But if you were going to boil it down to what's the one thing you've learned about looking for these solutions, what would that be, and what would your advice be to anyone who's working in cities or working on big global policy? Anyone want to take?
Well,
Gina.
I don't know if I'm answering your question, but what this panel has made me think about, and would be a great future panel or future scope of work, I think would be to look at, I think a lot of our work is premised on the assumption that better data leads to better decisions. And one of the things I stay up late worrying about is I don't know that this connection is as direct as we all think it is, right? Especially with AI and the growth of mis and disinformation, et cetera. From what you're talking about, municipal decision makers, they respond based on, stories or empathy, right? If you can't get them to the spot, they feel it. Or, Christel spoke about this as well, bringing in empathy for what is the experience people go through. So I would love to see work in this area looking at kind of the future of evidence-based policymaking, because we all think it's working that way. And I think there's a lot more to be discovered there.
I think so. Experienced and evidence-based. Very quickly, as we have a minute. Yeah, David.
Yeah, to complement what Gina was saying, actually the empathy part is really important, and that the people give the power to the words of other people, right? Because sometimes when you have this insight towards the work you're doing, then they say, which is the number? So the whole bet on this, and there's actually an explanation that the Secretary of Culture is the one leading this, is because we are trying that the city government hears not hard data. Crisis moment, again, we did this experiment. We showed first the Excel sheet with the numbers of the destruction of the hurricane, and then we went BR. And it was like, so now I know which decisions I can take, because actually it's not deciding from my desk in a privileged place, probably, and having some decisions towards the people, but actually seeing the people and being inside of the house that was destructed, you have a different mindset on what you have to change.
Okay. Cynthia.
Well, I'm lucky enough to be a policymaker, but also a woman in the transport sector, where we are a minority, and we have the sensibility and the empathy to live. I mean, all women, if we've used public transport, especially in Latin America or in Mexico, we've been harassed on a public transport unit. So I think we have a lot of challenges, however, a lot of tools in order to change the experience, especially of the most vulnerable sector.
So we're up to the awards already. They're going to start playing the music.
I think I come back to that we really have to prioritize walking public transport. And, you know, we still have not moved enough away from the car. And I think it's really, everything would change. The city would become slower, it would become calmer, it would become friendlier, and climate change, everything. So I think, you know, just slowing down. And women have to do that because they are doing the care work. So we know that. I think we have to bring in a different ethic of care into the way we design our lives and our technologies.
I totally like that. Care should be part of planning, right? It's a totally different play. So I would leave you with these 2 tips, right? Don't experience mobility and transportation and your cities from behind the windshield. Go out and walk and experience it. Same thing, don't experience your community and innovation by looking at stats or numbers. And with that, help me thank my wonderful, wonderful panel.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for our moderator.